나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교. Hello everyone, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Good morning, well, morning for me anyway. I was thinking a lot yesterday, meditating and chanting, of course, considering how this Ongi Kuden is going. And I had a very strong identification with something that really informed a specific aspect of Shakyamuni's teachings, and I believe it was in the Lankavatara when this one monk kept asking, almost interrogating Shakyamuni over and over again on the same darn thing, but slightly different wording. And it was the first time in reading all the sutras that in this particular instance, I could almost sense or hear Shakyamuni's teeth grinding, like he'd had enough. And he finally addresses his interlocutor and he says, you're not going to learn anything from my teachings if you're so obsessive about the words and the order of the words and the meaning of the words with the words, and you've got to let go of the words and attempt to discover, to understand, to embrace the meaning that's attempted through the words. Stop looking at grammar, sentence structure, an and or an if or a then or a may or shall, or stop being so hung up on the words, because language, as we know from repeated exhortations of all masters of Buddhism, language is fallible. It's incomplete. It's it's really, with as many words as the human species has come up with to try to communicate with one another, every word has so many abstractions and contexts. And, to try to understand something mathematically through language is just, you're not going to get there. You're going to get hung up on, and this is happening in physics, even with mathematics, is that the beauty of a mathematical argument is so romantic and enticing that you forget what it is you're trying to solve, right? And that really hit me yesterday, that some of the word salad we're going through in this particular document, I think, is the result of a monk, or maybe a lineage, maybe the entire Fuji school. Maybe this was Nico with two Ks' hang up, is that he was hung up on look at how he's taken apart every sentence. The I means Buddha, and it means us, and it means this and that, and the next word and the next word. Look, the answer isn't in the grammar. It isn't in the words. is just encompass the meaning. Now, I'm sure this monk means well. This document means well, in that they thought, as we do today, when not all of us are this way, but I know you've either heard or had experience with someone who, when you answered a question for them, they came back right away with the same question, but picking on a certain word you used. I mean, I've done it, right? And sometimes maybe it's appropriate because communication is unclear. Granted, absolutely. But there's a point. There's a point where you're chasing down words and you're not developing an understanding. You're not even hearing the answer anymore. You're completely fetishizing the words and the language to the point where an answer becomes meaningless because all we're doing is investigating grammar and language. Do you know what I mean? When I think about this, I always go back to school. My experiences in school, where there were students who were so desperate to make sure they understood what the teacher said that at some point their questions that were answered, but they wouldn't allow themselves to have the satisfaction of an answer because there were still some ways they could manipulate or question the words used. And that became a problem in itself. Do you see what I mean? And Shakyamuni certainly saw it with this interlocutor in the Lankavatara, and he just stop it. And he put an end to it. So, on the one hand, you can appreciate that the person just really wants to make sure they understand. On the other hand, they're trapped in a karmic trap of samsara, of so attached to grammar and words that they cease seeing the bigger picture, right? And this is throughout Shakyamuni's teachings, that this is why he said, don't follow me, don't follow. This is why we don't make images and statues of Shakyamuni Buddha to chant to, because that's a samsaric thing. It's not an enlightenment thing. It's not a mind thing. The mind doesn't have a representation as a body. The body is the utility, the what's the word I keep using? The apparatus for us to have a mind. So it supports the emergent mind, but it's not the mind. It's not the essential. And so we've seen yesterday, in the last video, whatever day that is for you, this slight confusion with the flesh and the bones being something more than just flesh and bones, something as a source of enlightenment. And that, I think, comes from this problematic of getting too hung up on the words. I'm going to give the document and the monk the benefit of the doubt that this person wasn't trying to be elusive, wasn't trying to be convoluted. They were honestly trying to convey their deep understanding or attempt of understanding of the teachings through Nichiren's doctrine and the sutras and these various documents that he's quoting. So I don't think it was ill intent, but I also think that part of the confusion that this monk may be inculcating into his rhetoric, he doesn't think it's confusing, and he's not trying to confuse. He's trying to demonstrate how knowledgeable he is. But there's a trace of what I'm suggesting comes from the original founder of the Fuji school. and it trickles into the language and the words of the students, however far removed. I don't know if this was a direct student of Nico or a student of a student of a student of Nico 200 years later from his master heard this. And it's, once you adopt, or once any human adopts a certain way of looking at a problem, and that person teaches another person, that seed of confusion appears in different ways depending on the student. It may even disappear, yay, or it may get more ingrained, right? And so, let me get my tissues here. Okay, sorry about that. And this is something that to me is almost palpable as I read this Ongi Kuden. That there's a fundamental kind of it's an error. And I will repeat it again because it seems so obvious to me that this, I think, was the source of the rift between Nico with 2Ks and the other 5 monks. So let's continue and see. Maybe it goes away. Maybe we see it again. I'm curious, aren't you? Okay. It also states another interpretation, Lotus Sutra. I think, interesting that it says it also states. Okay, we're still talking about the Ongi Kuden, but obviously we're talking about the Devadatta chapter and the Dragon Girl's enlightenment, right? So, again, we're taking apart the words here. That's this document. It also states, quote, the thoughts of her mind, end quote. Well, we know about thought and thought moments and how we construct our reality in samsara and how we can transcend that construction by our ninth consciousness, our Buddha mind. We know this, right? So here we go. The thoughts of her mind, quote unquote, represents the single thought moment, and the explanations of her mouth, quote unquote, the 3,000 realms. See, this is where we understand that every thought she has is a thought, every thought moment having 3,000 realms. We know this. This is fundamental teaching, right? But the way this sentence is taken apart in order to make that statement, I think starts to befuddle us. It's granularity that's unnecessary, that creates confusion. So let me show you what I mean. He quotes the thoughts of her mind, end quote. Okay, and this is supposedly from the Ongi Kuden, which are the notes that were taken, again, supposedly by Nico Shonin as he established the Fuji school. So if this is exactly quotations from Nico when he set up the Fuji school, then I think we can see we have a clue here as to what the problem is. The problem, I say, is because it still exists in the Fuji lineage through Nichiren Shoshu and Ikeda and et al., right? The thoughts of her mind represents the single thought moment, certainly. And the explanations of her mouth, the 3,000 realms. Now, the confusion starts with the division here. He's created a false dichotomy. The 3,000 realms are in the thoughts of her mind. It's not because she utters them with her mouth that suddenly they're the 3,000 realms. See, that division creates confusion, and it's false. The explanations of her mouth aren't the 3,000 realms. They're her karmic expression of her experience. How closely coupled those are with her thoughts is a different matter. How she expresses her thoughts is a samsaric attachment to language. The 3,000 realms are in her mind, not in her mouth. So I keep seeing this fundamental error blossoming, if you will, throughout this dialogue. It's uncoupling or creating an uncoupling that isn't there. Let's go on. Quote, she can accept and hold in its entirety, end quote, refers to the dragon girls accepting and holding the Lotus Sutra. Not wrong, just an odd way to say it. Jewel, quote unquote, means the wish-granting jewel, the wonderful Dharma, and open means opening body and mind to reveal them as the wonderful Dharma. Reveal them means wish-granting jewel, singular, wonderful Dharma, opening the body and mind to reveal them. Again, body? It's opening the mind. The body's a consequence, if you will. It's just not. When we attain enlightenment, in the mind, we instantiate the three bodies of Buddha. That's when this utilitarian apparatus is understood by the mind as something different than a samsaric tool, physical body, right? The manifest body, the Dharma body, the reward body, those are perceptions of the mind. They're not perceptions of the body. They're the mind's perception of the body, but the body isn't what perceives. And once again, this muddy water. Let's go on. From the 27 important matters of Fathoming the Lifespan, Chapter 3, quote, since I actuality, again, that's a misspelled word or typo, I don't know what, but quote, since I actually attained Buddhahood, it has been incalculable and limitless, hundreds of thousands of myriads of millions of nayutas of kalpas, end quote. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to look that up in the Lotus Sutra to see how he actuality says it. But the point here is we know what that statement, whether that's a direct accurate quote or not, but we know he says, Shakyamuni says in the Lotus Sutra, it has been this much time since I attained Buddhahood. I'm not sure if he says attained, but the point being, the lifespan of the Tathagata chapter is that Shakyamuni is telling his monks and everybody, and the lay believers, the monks, the bodhisattvas, everybody, at that ceremony of the Lotus Sutra, that it would appear that he attained enlightenment in this body, in this human body, in this lifetime. But in reality, he had awakened to Buddha, or he had attained, or Buddhahood existed many, many kotis of kalpas ago, right? His saying that was to dislodge everyone or disabuse them of the notion that Buddhahood was something that had been created by Siddhartha Gautama contemporaneously in his day. but rather Buddhahood was always pre-existing, and that Siddhartha Gautama realized that flow of Buddhahood in his lifetime. It is Siddhartha Gautama who transforms himself into Shakyamuni Buddha by realizing its pre-existent inherent nature in all phenomena, not the other way around, that some human being through meditation created Buddha or Buddhahood. And he's establishing clarity in lifespan of the... Notice it doesn't say lifespan of Shakyamuni. It doesn't say lifespan of Buddha even. It says lifespan of the Tathagata, because Tathagata is the explanation, albeit a word again, of this state of becoming and being that can be perceived with the mind. Follow? So let's see what he says about it. The Ongi Kuden states, so these would be presumably the words of Nico. I, in actuality, okay, that time it works, refers to the Lord Shakyamuni's actual attainment of the way in the remotest past. Nevertheless, the intent of this chapter is that I, quote unquote, indicates all living beings in the Dharma realm. Each of the 10 realms is indicated by I. Quote, in actuality indicates the Buddha endowed with the uncreated 3 bodies. Okay, that's a better reference to the 3 bodies there. Not this physical human body, but the mental cognition of bodies, the 3 bodies of Buddha. This is the meaning of actuality. Attained, quote unquote, refers to both the one who attains and that which is attained. Okay. To attain means to open. The Dharma realm is opened, to reveal it, as being the Buddha endowed with the 3, or the uncreated 3 bodies. Now it's starting to turn into word salad again, right? But it's, I'll give it credit, it's tracking so far. Let's see if it derails. Buddhahood, quote unquote, means awakening to and perceiving this. As for, quote, since, I indicates the past and Rai the future, Irai, okay. Within the words, he's even taking the word since apart, and he's looking at the Sanskrit version of since as Irai, and he's taking that apart and saying the E indicates the past and the Rai the future. Within the word since, Irai, lies the present. For the Buddha who is opening and revealing of I in actuality, quote unquote, both past and future are incalculable and limitless. This passage further indicates the 100 realms, 1,000 suchnesses, and 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. I'll go over that in a minute. As for the 2 words hundreds and thousands in the passage under discussion, hundreds, quote unquote, indicates the 100 realms, and thousands, the 1,000 suchnesses. These are precisely the single thought moment being 3,000 realms in actuality, Jino Ichinin Sanzen. All right, I understand what he's trying to teach here, but his obsession with words it's actually following a tradition, I will give him that, of, throughout Buddhism we have this this teaching device of associating numbers or certain words with many meanings. Not that they exist in this particular instance, but that by using similar or identical words in different contexts, one believes one is exploring the multifaceted meanings of a statement. But it can get really convoluted. And I don't think it's helpful, actually, especially today, because we live in a time barraged by so much information that to play this game, I think, can do more to glaze somebody's perception and tune out than to actually help understand. Does that make sense? Maybe sounds strange coming from a person who has no problem talking a lot of words. But I can sense just from reading this that a lot of people would just lose track of what he's talking about. Suffice it to say that without dissecting the words of the sermon, which again are almost subjective because of the translations, right, into different languages, making those illusions of hundreds and thousands of in these time periods that Shakyamuni was talking about, and then taking those same numbers and relating them to the structure of the 3,000 realms. It's not demonstrably wrong, but I think it's trying too hard. I think we all understand 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. That's pretty amazing to consider, without taking apart sentences to try to somehow prove the theory. I think that could introduce doubt, actually. But anyway, I think we all understand 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, and let's leave it at that. Now, here we go. Now Nichiren and his followers who chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo are the chief subjects of this, quote, fathoming the lifespan chapter. In general, bodhisattvas taught by the Buddha in his provisional aspect cannot uphold this chapter. For them, the trace teaching is primary and the origin teaching secondary, while for us, the origin teaching is primary and the trace teaching secondary. Even so, this chapter is not the essential teaching for the final Dharma age. The reason is that this chapter confers the benefit of reaping the harvest, emancipation, for those who lived in Shakyamuni's lifetime, while only the 5 characters of the Daimoku now sow the seed of Buddhahood for those who would come in the future, that is, at the present time. This being the case, the Buddha's lifetime was the age for the benefits of the harvest of emancipation, while the last age is the time for sowing the seeds. In the final Dharma age, sowing the seed is the basis. Okay, let me unpack that. It's very simple. What he's saying is that at the time when Shakyamuni was delivering this sermon for 8 years, he repeated it wherever he went, the Lotus Sutra, he was teaching people who hadn't considered that the Buddha nature and Buddha-ness is something that's existed since time without beginning, time without end, that it's a condition, an inherent condition of all phenomena. It's an inherent condition of formation. Follow? Before there can be form, anything, any form, that which produces the form has as its basis, its fundamental particle, if you will. Although I don't like using that word because we know particle is just a container of stuff, right? Well, the Buddha-ness, the energy, the vision, the clarity of Buddha is already there. But there's no engine of perception anywhere in the universe other than the emergent property we experience in this physical realm. So this is why Buddha-ness only occurs in our minds as a perceptive reality. Without our minds, it's still there, but there's no experience of it. There's no documenter of it. There's no observer of it in process, which is what Buddhism is about teaching us, because with that tool of perception, we can uncouple this brilliant, amazing, unfathomable process of life without being hung up on things like words or cars or each other, so on and so forth. Physicality. When we can uncouple physicality from identity, then our experience of physicality becomes amazing and unstressful, unpainful, unattached. Follow? So, in his way, this is what this document is saying. That at the time, Buddha was talking to people whose capacity was simply wrestling with the idea that there was a fundamental component to all things, that they're just in flow, in flux, constantly changing, albeit abiding with the nature of energy, which is fundamental to everything. And that was the maximal of their capacity. But for you and I today, we can encapsulate that thought, we can abstract it, understand it. But for us, understanding something isn't enough. We have to actually experience it. Right? We can understand when we watch a car race that cars go really fast and that would be nerve-wracking. And we can extrapolate in our minds all sorts of things from watching a Formula One car race or a horse race or parachuting without ever having done it. But for you and I, as much as we can encapsulate that experience in our minds and abstract it, it's nothing like actually doing it. You can watch skydivers all day long, but until you jump out of a plane and rely on that little string to open up something to keep you from splatting on the ground, until you actually experience that, it's just another physical thing. But when you jump out of a plane and you force yourself to wait to count to 10 so you don't blow your parachute up into the plane, right? And then finally, and it catches and it works. That sensation of that experience, actual experience, that will stay with you the rest of your life, right? That will be an experience completely singular from any thought or abstraction about what it would be like to do it. Correct? So this is the life, this is the age, this is the time period where you and I demand that kind of experience in order to really cement our knowing, our Buddha mind, our Buddha wisdom is actualizing that experience. And so how do we do that? By chanting Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. And that's what is meant by sowing, right? 4. The Tathagata, in accordance with reality, perceives the marks of the threefold world. There is no birth or death, whether withdrawal or emergence, nor is there being in the world, nor passage into extinction. So that's a long quote. And it speaks to this inherent nature that if you really understand that everything is in a flux of potential manifestations from that flow, then in actuality, all these things that we thingify aren't created or birthed or die and dissolve, that it's all just part of a great flow, a process of instantiations and showing off, if you will, of potential for anything, including you and I. It's amazing. This dance of energy. So we're not hung up on, I created this was created, this is dying, that is extinct, that is going away, this is coming too, this is emerging. All of that is conditioning of samsara and thingifying. But when you transcend that everything is a flow of the various colors of energy, if you will, to be poetic about it, then what is fascinating is the process, not what we think of as the result. The result isn't a result. It's just a constant fluid apparition of possibilities, right? And we experience them. How amazing, because we too are that same process. Wow, that's just amazing. It's hard to wrap your brain around that. But when we chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, we can get the proper idea about it, the proper experience about it, and know it. So the Ongi Kuden states, we're pretty solidly in the Ongi Kuden lately, Tathagata means all beings of the threefold world. Why do I keep seeing this? I don't want to seem like, and please, you have to understand, my mission isn't to destroy this document at all. This is part of our study. But come on, Tathagata means all beings of the threefold world? No, it doesn't. Tathagata means the source of all potential manifestations. So here's again that attachment to physicality, that attachment, that idea that the body is the nexus of enlightenment. It is not. It is the mind that is the nexus of enlightenment. Tathagata is that. So let's read on and see if maybe it fixes itself. Tathagata means all beings of the threefold world. When one opens the eyes of the, quote, fathoming the lifespan, end quote, chapter, and observes these beings, one perceives in accordance with reality that the 10 realms are originally inherent. He has to say that, because if he's identified the beings of the threefold world as the nexus for the Tathagata, then those beings all have the 10 realms and the 10 within them, and the 3,000 realms. The marks of the threefold world are birth, old age, sickness, and death. Yeah, but that's not Tathagata. When one sees these as birth and death that are originally inherent, then, quote, there is no birth or death. I might be able to make that work. And there being no birth or death, neither is there withdrawal or emergence. Yet this does not simply mean that there is no birth or death. To see birth and death and detest and seek to escape them is delusion. It is the view that enlightenment is acquired but to perceive birth and death as originally inherent is awakening. It is the perception of original enlightenment, Hongaku. Now when Nichiren and his followers chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, we open and awaken to originally inherent birth and death and originally inherent withdrawing and emergence, or emerging. Well, I think we've covered the subject enough that we can see with the rest of the paragraph what he's saying. And again, I don't know whether I should fault the translation or that inherent mistake of identity and self that pervades a lot of this. The first problem I have is with his statement of what the Tathagata means. Or Tathagata, the word Tathagata. And I could make the rest of the paragraph work if I just substitute that first sentence with Tathagata means the energy inherent in formations. Because you could say the energy of formations, not form, but the energy of formations is the primal force that contains within it the forming, the form, the birth of things, which carries with it, like a coin, the dissolution of things. It is that manifestation of potentials constantly flowing, constantly changing, that is our experience of life and death, birth and death, or of life in general. So if you understand that that's originally inherent in the very formation energy, to say that this is the iffiness of the translation or the statement itself. To understand that Tathagata is the pre-formation energy that is existent in all potential is one thing. To say that the Tathagata is or means the product of that formation, that's an error. Am I picking apart the words? In this case, maybe so. But I think it's a critical error to misunderstand that. And maybe it's just the limitations of the language at the time, or as I said, maybe translations. So there's a lot of information in that tracks, and we can use it that way. Again, I don't want to be an apologist for this letter, too. I'm just analyzing it for its clarity. I didn't have this kind of trouble with the Onko Kikigaki, the Onko Kikigaki document from the author Nico with 1K, or perhaps, so let's just leave it at that. All right, moving on. It also states, all right, one more and then we'll call it. It also states in the passage under discussion, no, quote unquote, and is, quote unquote, and birth, quote unquote, and death, quote unquote, and withdrawal, quote unquote, and emergence, quote unquote, and, quote, being in the world, quote unquote, and, quote, passing into extinction, quote unquote. Are we obsessing about words here? Are all behavior that is originally inherent and consistently abides. Okay. Inherent in the formations, right? Here we go. No, quote unquote, means that there exists nothing apart from the Dharma realms being all simultaneously the behavior of Myoho Renge Kyo. Is, quote unquote, means that hell, for example, just as it is the entire essence of the wonderful Dharma, which possesses the 10 realms inherently. As for birth, quote unquote, since this is the birth inherent in the wonderful Dharma, it accords with conditions, and since death, quote unquote, is the death revealed in the Fathoming the Lifespan chapter, the Dharma realm is simultaneously all true suchness. Because, quote, withdrawal, end quote, there is, quote, passing into extinction, end quote, because of, quote, emergence, end quote, there is, quote, being in this world, end quote, this being the case, no, quote, unquote, death, quote, unquote, withdrawal, quote, unquote, and extinction, quote, unquote, corresponds to emptiness. Is, quote, birth, quote, emergence, quote, and being in the world, quote, correspond to provisional existence, and, quote, the Tathagata, in accordance with reality, end quote, indicates the middle way. Yeah, I get it. Again, no, quote, death, quote, withdrawal, quote, and extinction, quote, represent the uncreated recompense body. Is, quote, birth, quote, emergence, quote, and being in the world, quote, represent the uncreated manifestation body. And, quote, the Tathagata, in accordance with reality, end quote, indicates the uncreated Dharma body. These 3 bodies are inherent in one's own person. This is also the meaning of, quote, one body being precisely 3 bodies is called secret, and 3 bodies being precisely 1 body is called hidden, end quote. And this being the case, the uncreated triple-bodied Buddha, who is the Lotus as Dharma entity, is the disciples and lay supporters of Nichiren because they hold this Buddha's honorific title, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, as convoluted as that is, it does track. I'm not sure how much of a tool this is for his students to understand how to better teach this doctrine of the Lotus Sutra, or for that matter, to open their understanding of the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra. I understand the granularity here, but I think for a lot of us, I think we just go rather eat a burger and fries than have to discern what the hell is going on in all of this quotation and meaning. But I have to say, in this particular case, yeah, I have no issue with any of these statements. They all track, albeit would take another hour of dialogue on my part to unpack it all to make it make sense. And perhaps you got it on the first try. Terrific. What I don't want is for you to feel confused, to take what you already know with your own insights, by the way, which is all Shakyamuni asked of us. I don't want this to derail you in any way. 5, next statement, and then we're done, I promise. If the Buddha were to dwell long in the world, persons of the typo's in here, of meager virtue would not plant wholesome roots, while the poor and lowly would crave and form attachments to the objects of the 5 desires, entering the net of notions and delusive views. So this is Shakyamuni talking about his approaching extinction and the lament of his followers. What are we going to do when you're gone? Displaying their obvious attachments to physicality, not owning for themselves that they have inherent Buddhahood. They still don't get it. So he's describing it. If he stays here, these people will never get it because they'll always rely on him as their source, not understanding that we ourselves are our own source of enlightenment. Something I say often, right? Nobody can give you Buddhahood. Nobody can teach you how to get there. Only assist you in learning for yourself with your own personal insights for you to instantiate your pre-existing, your inherent Buddha-ness. Only you can do it. No one can confer it to you. You can't make financial offerings to an institution or favors or all manner of ritual to support something other than yourself, because Buddhahood is your potential to release yourself from the bondage of your attachments. That is the nexus. You are the three-bodied Buddha, but only if you instantiate it, only if you experience it, only if you jump out of the plane with the parachute. Yeah? The Ongi Kuden states, this passage from the sutra teaches that if the Buddha were to dwell long in the world, persons of meager virtue, or those who are not completely dedicated, would not plant wholesome roots and would instead become caught page turning karma. Oh, this arthritis. Become caught in the net of false views. False views being that they are waiting for their enlightenment to be conferred onto them instead of realizing that they are the instantiators of their own Buddha realm. The meaning here is that, quote, persons of meager virtue, end quote, indicates those who missed the Buddha's preaching during his lifetime and now, after his nirvana, have been born in the country of Japan. Another convoluted statement. But basically what I was saying is that they're now just coursing in samsara. That is, it means those who slander the Dharma, the followers of Nembutsu, Zen, and Shingon. Now he's really taken a leap. It's not an incorrect association, because these followers of other sects believe that they're following the words of the Buddha, but they haven't gotten that final kick in the head in their thinking that they are the ones responsible for instantiating Buddha in their minds. That is the problem with these other sects. They all look outside of themselves for answers. All of them. Whether it be mudras and mantras and all of the Shingon, or whether it is the Nembutsu waiting for Amida to carry them to an enlightened land, or the Zen all contemplating their extinction of their mind as a place where they'll be swept into enlightenment. None of them really endeavors to instantiate in this very moment their Buddha mind. This is where they all go astray. And that, as we've discussed before, is what's termed slander. It's not slander against other. That's how we would think of it normally, right? It's slander against your own self. You're prohibiting yourself from experiencing parachuting. Just do it. Namo Myo Renge Kyo, right? As for not plant wholesome roots, quote unquote, wholesome roots, quote unquote, refers to the daimoku, and not plant indicates those who do not yet uphold it. Yeah, you could interpret it that way. Wholesome roots, I would say, doesn't refer directly to the daimoku, but a willingness to instantiate your Buddha nature. And as we know, that's through the daimoku. But there's an essential step there that he's leaving out, right? Notions, quote unquote, indicates ideas of the sort that one should, quote, discard, close, and set aside and abandon the Lotus Sutra. Okay, so he's equating notions with the attachment of earthbound or ultimately non-enlightening experience, which is what the Lotus Sutra is all about. Or that relegated to third place. See, he's completely wrapped in the idea of discrediting the other sects. But it's not the other sects that are at fault, it's the practitioners of those sects that's at fault. And they're being led by the nose by leaders, teachers, quote unquote, who are misleading them. Delusive, quote unquote, don't know if that's a real word, indicates the delusive words of the provisional teachings found in the sutras, and views, quote, means wrong views. To regard the Lotus Sutra, which is first and foremost, as third, is a wrong view. In the net, quote unquote, refers to the family who slanders the Dharma and disbelieves in the Lotus Sutra. So that's key here. It's not that they believe something else, it's that they believe something else in lieu of the Lotus Sutra. So there's a more direct aberration, right? Now Nichiren and his followers who chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo extricate themselves from sutras that present delusive views and from the nets, quote, of families who slander the Dharma. All right. So, yeah, we're seeing another dimension here in this document of the politic of the day, basically. And the competitive nature of Buddhist teachings throughout time, throughout the time of Buddhist discourse. There's always been this rehashing of clarity about the meaning of the sutras and sermons, right? This goes back to India, and then into Tibet, China, Myanmar is still going through all kinds of stuff from their early teachings. They're not even practicing Mahayana. We see this a lot throughout the world, even today. And it's political. It's about power. It's about control. The teachings are still the teachings, but it's this earthly desire to accumulate, to own, to thingify, to put hierarchies in, again, it's control, power, avarice. And it's going to show up everywhere because that's the state of experience we are in. If we can just remain here in experience, but understand with a new experience what the true nature of everything is, all of that pain and suffering and ridiculousness would just slough away, like mud on boots with a good hose. Enlightenment is clarity. It's cleaning that up. It's removal of the essential obsession of things, because that's totally created. It's contrived, right? We hear it called different things like dream or conjured, or as I say, constructed. It's not real. It's a form of fluidity that we experience that's colorful. It indicates the potential for absolutely anything you can dream up, right? We use the words commonly, but we fail to realize what we're actually saying. We know Buddhahood, but do we experience it? Like the parachute thing again. We can sew a parachute together. We can check out the material. It's fascinating. We can learn the engineering of how some air goes through the parachute and how we can open valves on the way down with certain pressures and steer the parachute. We can pack a parachute. We can make all the cables, the rope, I know there's a name for them, I can't think of it. Paracord. And the backpack and the buckles. We can understand every single fiber of what a parachute is. Doesn't mean we experience parachuting. The same analogy is going on here. We live our lives assembling the parachute, but we never really experience the parachute. That would change totally our thinking, our perception, our experience of parachute, right? So experience your parachutes. Chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Keep your practice strong. Have confidence. You'll only get more. Take care of your health, please. And be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. There's no point in it. You're getting there. We all are. And I deeply appreciate your participation. Don't forget, download the audio podcasts if they're helpful. Links in the video. And again, like, subscribe, share. Use the tools of the website, threefoldlotus.com, and this channel, and the podcast as tools to not only facilitate your practice, but help others you know who may be struggling with their practice or who need to understand more about what it is you do. And on that note, those of you who are able to support this podcast through your donations, you keep me going. You keep this going. You keep the Sangha going. So how amazing are you? I'm proud of all of you. And just keep doing what you're doing. Everything will constantly improve. You might want to take notes because we are very forgetful beings as humans. We take a lot of things for granted. We make big strides and we're so excited. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, this is an amazing practice. And a week later we're going, I don't know, maybe this doesn't work, man. And don't let yourself, well, you're going to falter. You're human, but don't get stuck there. You'll always have your mandala, your butsudan, and your practice. It's always here. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.